Ms. Joanna, taking us to this session. So I'm going to kickstart, but first I want us to share expectations concerning this question. What are our thought process? What we have in mind about this whole show? Just one or two people could share. Anyone? I wanted us to share a few pointers as to what our expectations are for this workshop. Maybe Mark, you could share a few with us.
Hello, hi Abula, could I share if Matt is still
Yeah,
here?
right.
Awesome. All right, happy to be here. I'm looking forward to the session. So I feel like from the title, I mean, I've never seen DT on like being used for something this macro. But it looks like the session is going to probe further into how DT can relate to like extrapolating culture and how that can be used to like design communities or maybe change like stereotypes in communities based on people's experiences and how those stories can be told, right? Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but yeah, like it's a really interesting topic title. So I feel like that's the direction my mind is going in.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, this is Derek. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I'll just piggyback on what Brian said. I think when I saw it first time, Rwanda came to mind because a few years back when you first about Rwanda, the first thing that will come to mind is genocide. But the country has miraculously rebranded itself into like the cleanest country with the cleanest city in Africa. Now they are known for a lot of tech admin and all of that. So I'm really excited and looking forward to understanding maybe some of the things that Rwanda might have done with and how these can be used in making some of these things happen. Especially in Ghana now, and it doesn't look like Ghana, we have good public consumption. So maybe we can start thinking about how to use it to change some of these things. So yeah, excited to be on the call for this.
All right. Thank you very much for your views and expectations. I hope they'll be met by the end of the day. Okay, so basically, so we'll be touching on the nation/community branding on the aspect of rethinking identity narratives and design thinking. All right. So basically, with our introduction, the goal of this workshop is basically to touch on bringing the understanding of participants, like diverse backgrounds, especially from the Ghanaian perspective, as you said, the rebranding aspect. What is the image that design thinking has an influence in Ghana in the aspect of what do other people think Ghana to be when we see nation building or we talk about community building. So I would like to touch on the definition of the identity narratives, and basically stories and representations that basically groups, individuals, communities, and even nations use to define and communicate what they value. So it's almost like the way we have, if you see someone wearing a kente, you realize that kente is something that is drawn to Ghana, and there's a story behind what a kente. So maybe you come to Ghana and be like, okay, it's something that is very unique to the Ghanaian society or the Ghana community. You don't particularly see it anywhere else but just Ghana. So we are just going to touch on that aspect so that we see how design thinking connects to that background. So I will be taking us to the first session, and my other co-colleague will take us to the second aspect.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Matthew. So could we go to the third slide? Right. Thanks. So as I was saying, from a practical perspective, we see that design thinking tackles the matter of problem in the society, and it has a strategic process that we go through, and we see that it's a problem-solving approach that prioritizes empathy, creativity, iterative processes, and all that. And it goes through particular stages. And as we know, connecting it to branding, I'm taking branding from the perspective of a product branding, where we see that, okay, there's this problem, this item that needs to be created. For instance, maybe we need to get packaging for a bag so that it keeps it warm. So we know that it goes through particular processes, right? And we see that these processes are empathizing, defining, ideating, prototype, implementing, and implement. Please can go to the next slide. Yeah, so we have this diagram explaining the processes for the design thinking. We have the first two, empathize and defining, as understanding what the problem is. Then we go to the matter of exploring, which talks about ideation and the prototype aspects. Then we go to the last and the least, which is testing and materializing it. So we understand that the design thinking goes through this processing, understanding, exploring, and materializing in these aspects. Okay, so we're going to look at the relevance of design thinking to community branding, right? So we understand that design thinking is relevant to community branding. It touches on the aspect of giving solutions to the society, right? And we got down some bullet points, which talks about, in a sense of design thinking to the community, we have it being empathy-driven understanding, in the sense that we identify a problem in the society, in the sense that, okay, this society needs a bridge because of maybe a flooding issue. So we empathize with the people to realize that this is something that has to be solved. And you realize that's connected to the second point, where it says that it's a human-centered approach. Definitely, if you're empathizing with someone or with a group of people, you take it from how it's going to affect the people, because it's human beings and there are people that are going to relate and interact in this regard. So that is a second pointer, and it has a unique value proposition in a sense that because of its the particular problem that has been identified, or the particular narrative that has been identified, it's there's a unique solution to that is guided for that particular community, and is going to give them that, let me say, designed solution, or satisfactory solution as it should be. I believe we can relate to the others in a sense of the innovative experiences, bringing about positive community impact, shared narratives, flexibility and adaptation, right? And positive tourism and investment. In this aspect, particularly because I think my colleague will touch on that, because design thinking in the aspect of community branding brings the sense of attracting tourism and investment, because of an identified narrative in the society. I think foreigners and international markets would want to know, okay, why did they do it in this particular way? Or especially when we talk about the story, the kente example of the kente material. We know there's a background story behind that, because we can't just have something innovative without there being a history behind it. So I think my colleague would continue in that regard. So please, the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Aula. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Sorry for joining in a bit late. I had to wrap up something, but thank you very much, Aula. So just continuing quickly, Brian, I heard what you said initially as well, and like Aula rightly said, we are trying to look at how do we change, use design thinking principles to also change like perceptions and narratives that are surrounding like communities. And also in this case, we want to take a look at Ghana. So the concept of nation branding actually has been, tried and tested in different spaces. But then it's, according to the World Intellectual Property Organization, they explained or defined it as a country's strategy to convey a particular image of itself beyond its borders to achieve a certain beneficial goal. So when you take yourself as an individual, you know that there's an image that you want to project, whether it is to your friends, to your family. It might or may not be different from what you project when you go to school or to your workplace. And it's similar for communities and countries. When we consider Ghana, there's an image that comes to the mind of people, depending on where they are coming from. When you mention USA, there's a certain image that comes to mind, and similar for other places as well. And that is what we are trying to see. How does design thinking play a role in terms of looking at the people, looking at different aspects of a country or a community, and then to shift narratives, whatever that comes to your mind, it's actually a power of something that has been designed to actually speak to your mind in that way. And then there's also a definition by Bloom Consulting that said nation branding is actually a systematic and coherent management of perceptions around a country, a nation, or a city that is inherent of political and social domains. So in other words, they are saying nation branding and city branding pursue not only economic goals, but they offer, or it offers a governance tool for development through social, cultural, and environmental policies. So just keep that in mind as we go through. And we hope that it would actually, spark your mind to actually think a lot about the communities that you also come from. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there are a couple of considerations that was, used to come up with the concept of designing for nations and communities. And as was previously in the previous slide, some of the considerations were the people itself. So when, in this case, we are looking at the people of Ghana, you are looking at what is the history, what is the education, what is the religion, what is the character of the people. And then also in terms of the governance, how is the country or the community governed? So you're looking at laws and regulations that are available or that are being used. Then you're looking at public opinion. So what is the public opinion of, let's say, Tema? Right? What do people think when you think about the public opinion of Tema? I think one of the things that come to mind is immediately industry or industrial area, right? Aside other things, I'm sure people who live in Tema would also have like a different perception about themselves. But these are some of the considerations that when they were bringing like the concept of nation and community branding together, they considered. So the governance element, they were also looking at exports. What are the products that are coming out of either the community, the city, or the country, or what are the services in this case? So in Ghana, we are considering, for example, what are the products or services that are going out of the country, and based on which we can actually brand either the country or the community. So please keep that in mind as we go on. And then also looking at the element of tourism. What is the nature, what is the nature, what is the region, what are the cities, the landmarks, the landscapes? These are also, considerations that are used in branding a community or a nation. And obviously culture and heritage. So what is the language, the history, the art, and the literature? I think there's a lot that we have here in Ghana that has not even been documented yet. So as we are going along, you also think around what is the culture and heritage of Ghana. We always, Aula made mention of the fact that the rich history behind Kente, for example, which is synonymous to, in this case, Akan and the Ashanti. There are different versions of it. And then also what is the investment and immigration? So you're looking at internal external investment coming in, and then also local investment being made. Yes, so the model for nation branding was actually put together by Simon Arnold, and he basically put these considerations into what we call the hexagon model. And that is what has been used by a lot of countries, a lot of institutions to actually brand it. So when he talked about the people, it's basically some of the things that we have already spoken about, but he put it in a hexagon. So when we are considering the country Ghana, let's think about it in this hexagon model where we are looking at the people of Ghana or the people of, let's say, Cape Coast. How do we feel, people of Ghana or Cape Coast are considered? I think there's one of the things that is always said about Ghana that's like, we are hospitable. How true is that? There's also the governance. What is the public opinion about the national government? I think if you ask Ghanaians now, there would be a lot of opinions about that, as compared to asking a non-Ghanaian about what is your opinion about the governance issues of Ghana, and also looking at the exports. So basically looking at the considerations and then running it through a model that actually now sits with the people's mind or creates a certain kind of identity for either the country or the community. So please go to the next slide. Yeah, and then in addition to Arnold's hexagon model, the Bloom Consulting also came up with the Bloom Wheel. And this was also looking at what are some of the advantages of, branding a community, a country, or a city. And then they are looking at what will be the experience of that particular design process that would now create an identity for the country or a community. So what is the experience that people would have when they actually come in, because then you are actually influencing people's perception about either the city or the country. And then also what will be the lifestyle that will be shaped based on this particular identity that is created through a design process or through the design process. And then you also want to create a certain kind of admiration, which would now attract investment or economic value, and then a unique identity that will say, okay, when you hear of, let's say, Kumasi, there is a unique identity for Kumasi, as opposed to hearing about Tamale, where you know that there is a distinct, separation when it comes to somebody saying that I love Kumasi and then somebody saying I love Tamale. They would be saying I love both cities based on certain uniqueness that they have attached to it. And this is as a result of a certain identity that they attach to these two cities. And it would have been as a result of a design process that has gone on in the back end to actually brand that community or city in that way. Yeah, so one of the objectives, before we go to our first activity, a quick look at some of the objectives. Why was it important to actually consider community and nation branding? And based on the assessment from the Bloom Consulting, from WIPO, from Simon Arnold, they actually noticed that after 7 countries had adapted the model, it had actually increased foreign direct investment and trade. Also because certain countries were like, okay, this is something that we don't have, and you have been able to brand it in a way that it now sits in our minds as you are currently like the leader. So then people are able to really tap into that and then make investments. And then it also improves condition for talent attraction and retainment. So there is currently there are quite a number of advanced countries that have used the design thinking process or the brand identity, brand design process to actually put a certain identity to their countries and their communities that have been able to attract certain talents and also retain them. It also has the potential to encourage cultural exchange. If people don't see that there is a unique identity to Ghana, there's no way they would fly into Ghana to come and experience Ghana. And therefore, it has encouraged a cultural exchange. Currently, there's a lot of concerns about young Ghanaians leaving the country for UK, for Canada. And there's a reason. It's because they have branded themselves to be accepting, young talent now, and therefore it's appealing in the minds of young Ghanaians that, okay, I need to go there. But what if we turn it the other way around? How then do we also brand and use a design thinking process to actually create an identity that rather attracts, other people coming into the country rather than, having the current brain drain that we are having. And also it facilitates international exchange and partnerships. So in a way, if we know that we have a unique product or service that we are selling on the global market, someone who does not have it, another country who does not have it, would definitely be interested in having partnerships with us. So currently, we know that Ghana's cocoa is one that is being sold on global market. Our gold is being sold on global market. And this has created a sense of partnerships for certain advanced countries to come in. And that has been as a result of us putting ourselves out there as this is a product that we have, and other countries that do not have it see it as a unique way that we have branded ourselves. So that's also one objective. It can create or facilitate those exchanges and partnerships. It also sustains development of key sectors such as tourism, technology, mining, medical science, and other sectors. I think in Ghana, what we have seen in the past years has been more focus on tourism than other sectors, but then tourism and perhaps mining, but not so much in medical and science, but also in terms of creative industries. I think that's also something that we are gradually using the elements of brand design to also, position ourselves on a certain level where we are attracting certain, we are trying to sustain certain developments in those sectors. It also fosters sustainable economic growth. Once you are able to position yourself well and you are having all these direct, foreign investment coming in, there's improvement of conditions, even locally, in country, in the city, you are having more partnerships, you are sustaining certain key sectors of the economy, then you are able to sustain your economic growth. So that's also one other objective. And then also mitigating social challenges through public policy. There are certain things, so one aspect is also the perception of certain communities and the narratives that have formed or been formed around certain communities for so long that have created certain social challenges. So community branding, for example, has a powerful role in mitigating it or even changing that. And then it also helps to build certain policies that actually protect, the people within those communities. And it also enhances a sense of belonging and proud, and pride, sorry, that's supposed to be, and create a proud place for its citizens to actually belong. I think one of the things that Ghana did, during the World Cup, for example, in South Africa, at some point it was like, we were carrying the entire continent on our shoulders. And that actually gave a sense of pride, because everywhere was like Black Stars. Unconsciously, through sports and football, it was actually a form of a nation branding through one sector of sports, and games that actually put us on a map, on a global map, that all Africans were like, we are part of you because this is Africa. You are the only one representing Africa now. So it has a powerful way of creating that sense of belonging in the minds of people. I wish we wouldn't have so many young people going out and then, denying Ghana in certain spaces. But we are hoping that through this, introduction to nation and community branding, Ghanaians who even go out of the country or out of their cities would actually still feel a sense of pride where they come from. The next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we want to take a quick look at Ghana's attempt at nation branding. We've already spoken a bit about some of the areas that have been touched on, but we wanted to look at one key area that actually brought Ghana more to the global scale or to light in terms of the diasporan community, and then all of a sudden Ghana was everywhere. And that is actually on the next slide, talking about the year of the return. That was a huge attempt to brand Ghana as, the place to call, all people across the diaspora. It's been 400 years of, post-colonial slave trade, Atlantic slave trade and all the issues that went on during the colonial era. And we were calling all the families back home. So we were like, come back home, you are welcome here. We need you, come, let's develop our country together. And then it was a huge effort by the nation to actually position Ghana in the minds of, everybody in the diaspora or everybody outside of Ghana, across the borders of Ghana, as a place to actually come back to. And as to whether this was successful or not, we are yet to still find out. But I hope that as we go through, we are thinking, what exactly did the year of the return achieve? And what angle did it also look at when you look at it in terms of the considerations that has been laid out for nation branding and community branding? If you go on to the next slide, after 2019, there was another effort. 2020 COVID hit, everything went down. And then 2021, it was looked up again about, so the year of return happened. People came in from the US, from Europe, from Asia. What then happened on the continent? What did we see? Was it just, people coming to Bloomberg, partying till 4 a.m. and then going back, or was there an actual benefit? So what exactly is Ghana trying to achieve with this particular kind of nation branding that we are actually a country to come back to and actually invest in? So on the next slide, we want to quickly, do a quick exercise to see how do we test. We want to see if Ghana, the year of the return as a concept of nation branding, actually passed the test of the hexagon. So when we look at the hexagon model, it was looking at now the people. So I'm going to ask you, do you feel that Ghanaians or Africans outside actually felt like they saw themselves as people also of the country based on how we presented the country Ghana? You can maybe raise your hand and then share your thoughts quickly. It's a quick exercise that we want to see how well Ghana actually performed in this test of the hexagon model. Yeah. Any comments coming from someone? It's actually an open exercise just for about 3 minutes, then we'll move on. So please open up and share your thoughts. When we consider the people, or you can pick any of the elements of governance of the people, when you look at the products and services as well, when you look at, you can pick any of the elements and then use it as the test. So we have the people, we have the exports, we have the culture and the heritage, and then we also have the tourism. What are your thoughts on passing this year of return campaign as a nation branding? Did it succeed? In which angle or in which of the considerations do you think it succeeded? In which of the considerations would you say it didn't succeed?
So I want to try.
Okay. Yes.
I'll try to say yes, with the heritage and the people, I think it was great. So good that you had people from the diaspora who were non-Ghanaians, right? Like maybe from Nigeria or Uganda or Kenya or some other parts of Africa who still felt like connecting to Ghana through the year of return was connecting to their roots. So I think in that sense, in terms of the heritage, it was like really well sold, right? In terms of Africa being the central point and Ghana being this node that people can like come to and still connect to, Africa as a whole. So I think that's how it worked in terms of the heritage. I don't know if I'm capturing this one in terms of the people, but I feel like in the people it worked both ways, right? Great. I mean, to see all our long lost brothers and sisters come here and like chill with us and party, and like you said, go to Bloomberg and sandbox and have all that fun. But when you also look at the consequences of what it meant in some areas, right? Like in terms of now certain people are going hella crazy with prices. And you have bread in Ghana that's more expensive than bread outside Ghana and all those things, which is also kind of the consequence of places being reshaped to rather suit an external market that only comes in December rather than that like supports the local ecosystem, right? So I feel like in that way it's like it helped, but then it also kind of had its consequences in terms of the the byproducts of the effect of the rebranding, right? Which I guess is usually a consequence in cities if you're trying to position yourself and invite a certain market to like, or a certain class of people to come into an economy. It mixes up things and changes how that economy relates to the people that primarily live there.
Right, I totally agree. I also think that in terms of the people and the culture and the heritage, it definitely made a positive, influence. Yeah, and you could see that people actually, you heard comments like, "Oh, this is not how we were told." We actually, had perceptions about, the place. Some of the people were actually afraid to come until they actually came and saw that, it's not as, it's sometimes spoken about in the media. So yes, definitely on those angles, in those two considerations, it definitely made a positive impact. Edna is saying in the chat, in the aspect of products, I think Ghana passed the test in the sense that people from the diaspora were repping made in Ghana goods even when they left. Yes, that's very true. Especially I think on fashion, it made a huge impact. People were really proud to just kind of like, represent the motherland, if I can put it that way, and then have a sense of, yes, we have our own clothing. We have, I just want to wear something that, connects me with my own people. So I would also agree in terms of the products. Yes, that also passed a test in to some extent. Any other, before we move on? Any other comments? If you have a comment, you can unmute and share your thoughts. Okay, in terms of investment on the economic side, what are our thoughts? Do we feel that Ghana also passed the test, or was it that after that we didn't really feel the impact, or when we are considering like investment into the country, did it really attract a lot of, foreign direct investments, or even in terms of like getting significant investment in the country that actually translated into significant developmental changes? What do we think? Any comment?
I wanted to give my contribution, even as part of this. Yeah, I think it did, because I started looking at the monetary investments. We realized the investments were in terms of the branding of the branding. It made a lot of people get to know about Ghana, because the first launch of it, people were like, okay, what is this about? Then as the years went by, it became louder. Like people back in other countries coming here went to tell the other people in the foreign land, okay, this is what my country is about. And over the years, you realize that it expanded over time. If you look at the number of people that attended over the years, you realize that it had made some sort of like announcement concerning like what your return was all about. And I also realized one last thing in terms of the exports, we have like the sense of foreign exchange, where we have from people have getting to buy maybe the Ghanaian products, the kente. I don't know, I like saying kente, but kente and the bracelets and all of that. I think it got much revenue for the country too.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think if we move on to the next slide, and we want to look at something that happened with one example. Matthew, I'm sending you a certain link. I hope we can see it. So there was this example that was that I want to, open us up to. It was actually by Nana Kedia. He's the founder of Brand Dinkra, using our Dinkra symbols as, a tool to really come up with, Afrocentric branding. And one of the things that he did with this, so we've taken a look at Ghana. We have said that as a nation, using the example of the year of the return, there are certain areas that, certain considerations in the hexagon model that actually passed the test. And some maybe we didn't really see it too much. But then bringing it down to a community level, Nana Kedia actually had this interesting class called the Logo Lab, I think 2018. And he tasked, the group of creatives to actually come up with using the design principles. In this case, it was more, using graphic design, but it was also taking them through actually the design thinking process where you are ideating, you are defining an issue concerning the community, and then you are you have a sense of connection with a certain community and its people, and then you are defining the issues that have come up concerning that community, and then you are ideating to see, okay, how then do we change this particular narrative? So in this particular logo lab, the example that we are looking at for a community branding is actually Nima Zongo. I think if you've ever lived in Accra for so long and you know Nima Zongo, it's one of the biggest, I think, if not the biggest, Zongo communities in the country. And it is very well known. To some extent, I'm not sure where it actually started, but it's quite known as one of the notorious communities. There's a lot of crime, there's a lot of, a lot of social vices and stuff that are going on. And the idea was that this is a negative perception about this community, right? And therefore we wanted to brand, use, design to really change this perception and this narrative. So in the class, he tags the group of creatives to actually do this exercise. And yeah, he was like, let's look at it. Matthew, I'm trying to send you the link. I hope you can see it. 2 links. The first one is a link to, so it's actually to a Facebook page where he uploaded, because it was actually the work of the creatives. So we can have a look at it over there.
Sharing it shortly, yes. There we have it. Can you all see the screen? Oops.
Yeah, so please go down all the way.
Okay, let me know when to stop.
Yes, please go down. Almost there. Please go down.
That's okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Up a bit. Then we can
Video.
up. No, up a bit. Yeah. So there are different groups of people who participated in this particular exercise. And the idea was that how do we now change this narrative, right? So it was, for this particular exercise, it was just come up with a logo, change the identity. And then the background of it was that Nima Zongo has a very negative perception. There's crime, young people are not serious, they are doing drugs, they are into all sorts of things. But then what is actually one positive thing that you know about Nima Zongo? And then so many things came up. And it was actually a research that was made by the group. And then they found out Nima is actually the spice hub, the local spice hub of Accra. How many of us knew that? Just a quick question to the group. How many of us knew that? Anyone? Did
Yeah, I know that.
Did anybody know that Nima was actually one of the go-to places for local spices? It's actually a hub of different, like a flavor of spices, different flavors of spices. And it was one of the good things that we don't usually hear about the community. The other thing was that it was also one of the places that was churning a lot of young musicians, especially, young talents in the creative industry. But that was also not something that was already out there. So passing this community through the design thinking process, we wanted to connect with the people. Are they really what we know them for concerning the negative perceptions? And we said, no. Okay, so then what is the issue? The issue was that there's been a negative perception that has gone on for this community for so long. How then do we change it? So let's ideate. We went into a room, come up with so many different ways. And then we are saying that, okay, for it to have a way of sitting in the minds of people, we also need to change the outlook. If you consider Nima, there's there has to be a positive image that comes to your mind. So different groups worked on it in different, so we'll see some of the different work. So this work was actually by one group, and then they came up with some of these amazing, visuals for the community. If you go back, yeah, so Matthew, maybe you don't necessarily click on it so that it goes all the way back again, and then we'll go down and see the different groups and what they did. Yeah, so please, so this was also another group that came up with how then do we bring Nima Zongo to come alive. So just by looking at the visuals, you realize that it has a positive, it plays a positive, it has a way of changing your immediate outlook of the community. If this was actually supposed to come out, so they played along with it on, different, like tote bags, on t-shirts, and then we were imagining what it would feel like if the young people in Nima Zongo were to now connect with this kind of new identity. How will it sit with them to actually even rebrand their own themselves? And then it's also known for suya. Okay, I'm reading some of the comments. It's interesting about the spice. I know it's for shopping and the suya, so it has like one of the biggest markets in Accra. And these were all the positive narratives that were not being shared. Rather, it's more about the crime, the robberies, and everything that was happening. So this group of people were now rethinking. So all of this was ideating and then coming up with so many different ideas. And then Matthew, if you go to the second link I sent you, it's a Behance, it's one of the last group, the work that they also did. Yeah, so if you go down a bit, you see some of the other groups. And I just wanted to find out, so this is also like a different way of, visualizing Nima Zongo for young people to also connect with it and then rebrand the community in a very positive way. So I just want to ask the group, just taking a look at the work that was done by this small group, what have been your impressions about bringing design and assuming, so this was just a logo lab exercise. It hasn't been officially, put to the market yet. So I'm not sure if there's still a prototype, but then I know that some of the participants were actively looking forward to participating in that. But I just want to hear your thoughts immediately on what you think about what you knew about Nima, and then what do you think about this, looking at the visuals now that you have. Anyone? Please unmute and share your thoughts.
Okay, I would like to share my thoughts. Okay, I would see, even in this process, I always had the negative aspects of Nima, because you hear like the Nima boys have done this, the Nima boys have done that, and it had like a negative perception in my mind, because anytime I'm passing Nima, I just don't want to get close to that place. But having to hear about this, it was really an eye opener, and having to also understand the process, taking it the identity narrative, taking it to the design thinking process. It makes me realize that there's actually a positive light out of Nima that I didn't much regard, and because of this logo creation, like this group undergoing this research, I realized that okay, aside Nima, probably there are other communities too that we have had maybe negative perceptions on, which we could also take through the design thinking approach, which might also come out in a different light, just as Nima is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There's a way that it has an immediate way of changing your perception or your narrative about a certain place or a certain group of people. Anyone else to share their thoughts? I see Makiba has put in the chat, looking at the visuals, it looks so refreshing. However, I know Nima and it doesn't look like that. The visuals is making me want to go and take a drive through there. Exactly. I'm really happy that it has been able to already inspire you to also go there. Which is one of the objectives of actually community branding, which is to encourage, exchanges. So you actually go there and experience and then exchange your perception for their reality, right? So yeah, anyone else? I think, yes, please go ahead, Edna.
Yeah, so comparing the perception I have about Nima and what I'm seeing now concerning the local exercise, it's making me confirm something that the elder used to say, that to every bad situation, there is something good in it. So I think in it, like, it just needs a touch of something. Because had it not been this exercise, we wouldn't have seen things like this. And I'm sure if we should probe more into it, there are going to be good positive things coming out rather than the negative stuffs we used to know.
Right. Thanks, Edna. I completely agree with you. Any other comments before we move on? You can unmute and share your thoughts. Anyone else to share their thoughts on this?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Derry, please go ahead.
Yes. I think I'm looking at this from a storytelling perspective because it's not like the things that we know or perceive about Nima there's no truth in them. But I think those are the things that we've heard over and over and over, and sometimes probably have seen evidence of them happening.
Exactly.
But if you look at this right now, this is like a whole new story. It looks like there's a platform or an outlet for Nima to share this other side of them, which before now probably didn't exist. So I'm happy that design thinking is able to create new platform for people to share this other side of them, because the conventional ways or platforms that exist probably just always highlighting the bad side of Nima.
Exactly. No, it's very true. And you're right. It's not that we are disregarding the realities, but then it's just that the negative narratives have been reinforced so much that you actually sometimes forget that there is actually good stuff about the place. So that is why we felt like, you can actually pass a community through the nation branding or community branding model, using design thinking to really now shift the perception, shift the narrative around that, to now focus on because this is actually something that can also drive serious economic, value into the community, because then people would probably want to now engage more, go and visit there more, buy stuff from Nima more, and even the sense of belonging of youth and people coming from Nima. It's like how we maybe comparing this to before the year of return. I think there was also one city branding that was tried, and it blew up big time. If you remember Kumerica, they had their own passports. They had, there was a whole Kumerican song, anthem and everything, and it actually created like that sense of, yeah, I come from this place. I'm proud to be here. I'm ready to invest my efforts in here. And that is actually something that can drive huge economic value, right? Aside changing those narratives and shifting those perceptions. So in this particular example that this one worked on, he touched up on, okay, we love our culture. So then they were looking at what is the culture of the Nima community, right? And this is something that can also educate. So they looked at, aside the visual identity of it, We love our culture. How then do we let Nima come alive? So they were looking at their food. They are looking at, different elements of it. Matthew, if you go down a bit, you will see, they are looking at, the dream, like what does Nima represent in terms of the work that we do? What are the dreams of the youth in there? The music of the Nima Zongo, we all know Shatawale, on a global scale, but how many Shatawales do we have in this community that haven't been able to come out because of the narratives that have surrounded it? You're looking at their food, you're looking at what is their fashion sense, so all of these elements have a way of bringing or driving huge economic value to the people, and then really changing this perception and this narrative. So this was just an example that we wanted to use or give and share with you all today, so that you would have a good sense of how design can actually play a role in shifting narratives, shifting perceptions, changing, from positive to from negative to sorry. Okay. Yeah. So how then does, design thinking and passing communities, passing cities, passing a nation through this process, and then testing the different considerations or the elements of nation branding or community branding, and changing this narrative that will be able to now satisfy some of the different objectives where you are seeing both the social benefits and the economic benefits in this angle. So those are some of the things. We are almost through. Matthew, if you go down. So this was the concept of the community example. We've already looked at this. And then some of the countries that are actually actively using nation branding or city branding, community branding. We have the US, you have Netherlands, Canada, France. So many countries have actually adopted it. And when we were researching this and we're putting this together, you realize that it's actually a lot of advanced countries. And one of the things that we do not realize is it actually has a way and a role to play in actually moving a country from a developing country to an advanced country, just by passing your community, your city, your nation through this process. It actually has a way to drive your economic benefits, your social benefits, your cultural benefits, and really give you a huge developmental value. And I think if we can learn from some of the countries that have been actively adopting some of the different models, and the different elements, we have a good way to actually also move our communities and our cities beyond what we are seeing now. So this is just one example, and I think we have a huge opportunity. This is just an introduction to the concept. I know some of you already knew about it, maybe not, but then there's a huge opportunity, there's a huge potential to really start using design as a design thinking and also like brand design as a way to really shift narratives in even smaller communities, and then moving it to a city and then to the nation. So this is just an introduction. If you haven't, we are going to open it up for questions, comments. I hope that at least you are walking away with one other positive narrative of your own community. I don't know where you are coming from, but then whether of your community, of your city, or at least thinking about how best can we also brand Ghana in a certain way that hasn't been done before, so that it shifts a certain narrative and then creates all these benefits that nation and community branding can bring in. Awula, if you have any comments and additions, please feel free to add, and then we open it up for questions. And I think Matthew, you will take over from there. So Awula, please, if you have any additions, please go ahead.
Well, with my additions, I would say you've quite like you touched base on most of them, because having to go through this research, it's one thing that I did realize is that the design thinking has a very great influence on narratives, the narratives per different communities in the country. And I know there are somewhat like negative perceptions about particular communities in Ghana, like Ashama, and then anytime you mention something like Kaswa, everybody's like, hey, Kaswa. There's a whole lot of like perception concerning that side. And even think about Kumasi, the people have the mindset that Kumasi, they're not so open-minded, sorry to say, but in that regard. So I believe that design thinking can really be a great influence in changing a lot of perspectives for people, like even on a larger basis, so that like it's I believe out of darkness can come light. So I think design thinking is the light that can really change a lot of like narratives for um a number of people. And one thing I also lastly want to share is that even in going through this, we realized that the hexagon, the theory of the hexagon and everything, it has a very great influence on countries in terms of like decision making, and also how it influences the revenue sector of countries. Because as my colleague mentioned, she mentioned like various countries that are not the advanced countries, and they are really like expounding on that aspect of to create a lot of revenue and to make the image of their country stand out. When we think of France, we think of the first thing that comes to mind is the Eiffel Tower. When we think of Italy, we think of maybe the cultural aspects. You know, so I really believe that if we, from the individual perspective, take this aspect of nation branding very seriously, even amongst ourselves, it can really throw a lot of light in the future to come. So we don't have a lot of our youth going to the advanced countries like US and Canada to have their impact there, but rather we would, even if we should go, would have the open-mindedness to come and influence what we have learned from that aspect, and also influence what we have learned in this country. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Aula. Makiba, I'm just reading your comment. This was so interesting and important. Thank you very much. Would be interested to be on the mailing list for future talks. Really enjoy this. Thank you. Yes, Matthew, I believe, has all the registration, so you would definitely be on the mailing list. But we also want to hear from you. Makiba, thank you so much for your feedback. Any comments, questions? Yes, Brian, please go ahead.
Yes, I want to share feedback. First off, Joanna and Awula was an awesome session. I mean, for someone who teaches design thinking, it's always really enlightening to actually learn one of the new ways it can be applied, right? And again, you never think of it on such a large scale, although it makes sense because everything on the world is human-centered, right? So yeah, I think that was a really interesting lesson, and also reminded me about like my first year in college. We learned a bit about Chinua Achebe and the single story, right? That's really perpetuated around Africa and African communities and people thinking Africa as a continent, all that stuff. And I mean, learning the power of the hexagon, and even more importantly, not just looking at people, but all the systems that affect continents, countries, communities, and how they all come together, but we just see as one thing. It just brings this like importance to how we can more like intrinsically look at the different aspects of things and how they can influence culture, people, and just the larger brand of a community or a nation, right? So that has been interesting just to see all that goes into it and all the different important elements in this hexagon. And I think definitely on a smaller scale, but even with my company, I want to see how these elements are kind of considered and how we can better apply it towards what our story is. So very enlightening. It's been a really great session.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, I think there are some comments. Derry, I think this is an interesting topic because countries like the US have prospered from cosmopolitanism so much. Right now, Ghana really needs a new image, yes, and it's great to know that DT can be applied. Definitely, definitely. I think so many countries, Japan, some of the advanced countries, it has only been through like a change of identity and a change of perception. They have sold a certain identity to us. Yes, please go ahead. I think someone has.
I was just saying Singapore is a brilliant example as well, right?
Yes.
From Lee Kuan Yew to where they are now with the biggest airports in the world and all these like changes they're making, like it's incredible.
Yes, yes. And I think one of the things that we didn't actually, or we haven't considered also as, the power of, just using the design thinking process to change that narrative is actually the ripple effect it creates on other sectors of the economy, that they are actually driving huge and positive development efforts just by changing perceptions and narratives. So people actually think that US is like the greatest country in the world, or Singapore is like one of the cleanest country, or it has the biggest economy. And that is not to say it is not true, but it's also because they have sold it to you as so, and therefore we believe it. Even Kigali has, gone on a huge campaign of no plastics, and it is one of the major ways of shifting the narrative that, okay, now we are not doing any more plastics. We are actually one of the cleanest cities. We are also one of the safest cities. So it's actually perceptions that sit in the subconscious that we don't realize. It actually influences even our economic decisions concerning these countries and these cities. Gordon is also saying, awesome session. The hexagon model is enlightening. And I'm also going back to Nima to check it out. Definitely. We are hoping that the elements of the Logo Lab would actually come alive soon, because this was just a classroom exercise. So I've been trying to advocate, let's get some funding, really test it, pilot actually on the market and see how it actually transform the community, and then we create a ripple effect. But I don't think it has been done yet. So I'm also really looking forward to it. Yeah.
We're all interested in the Nima trip when it's happening. So join in the DT team. Let's make it happen.
Yes, yes, yes. Please, are there any other comments before we have just 6 more minutes and then we close? Yeah. Any other comments, please unmute and share your thoughts. Oh, I see Paulina is here. Oh, hi, Paulina. Busiest woman on earth. Okay, Makiba is also up for visiting Nima. Yes.
Support. Let's start the rally.
Okay, please, are there any other comments or questions? Maybe if not, then Matthew, you can take over. Thank you so much. Awula and myself, we are really happy that we're also able to just like test this as well in terms of researching, and then we were happy to see that actually it has more benefits and more potential than we had even thought of. And yeah, I think at some point we were thinking the concept of design thinking to nation branding to community, how does that even work? And then when you read about it and you see how it's actually been applied, it has huge impact. Even in innovation, and then the ripple effect it creates on development, how it actually accelerates development in certain countries. It was really amazing to learn it. So we're also happy that we were able to share it with you, and hopefully we can have a follow-up session where we look at how to really bring it up and make it come alive more in communities. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. And Matthew, over to you, or Doc.
Right. Thank you very much, Joanna and then Paula. It's been great having you to take us deep into rethinking, design thinking, and then sort of engaging branding communities and all that. I think it's been interesting, especially how you gave that example of Nima and then the perceptions we have about Nima, and then how they've been able to use, most especially technology that we have, in order to bridge that gap. And people are interested in going to see uh, Nima. We focused on what we did today. I mean, it's always interesting how we apply design thinking to various aspects and various fields. And I just want to say that it's been insightful, and I guess I hope everyone learned something new that we'll be able to apply to not just our communities, but consciously will make efforts to put Ghana on the map, just like those developed countries are doing. And yeah, Dr. Gordon, I don't know if Dr. Gordon is still online and we want to share some thoughts. Prof. All right, then I guess I bring the meeting to a close. So once again, thank you all for joining us. And next month, as I said earlier, design thinking is applied to almost everything. So next month, we'll be looking at design thinking and sort of doing missions. So hopefully sometime in the middle of the month, links will go out, and we look forward to having you all join us again to explore the other areas where design thinking can be applied. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
All right, great session. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.